Hey, I'm JD Haley with Aux'Arc Climbing, and we're shooting for a less than 18-minute video, so let's jump right into it. We're going to talk today about the tools and the hardware that I think you should have on hand for maintaining your climbing wall. Some of them will be required just to get going, some of them will be pretty recommended early on, and then some of them are just kind of extra. So we'll kind of go in that order and go from there. Obviously, I'm in the full reset, everything's sorted out, everything's in bins. And we'll lead on right off with saying that I think you gotta have some storage, right? So I got a couple of $15 bins. I got 3 of them, 3 drawers each. That I keep all my holds in when they're on the with what's left that's not on the wall, or they're nice for moving around when I'm doing the cleaning. I've also got a little parts bin, another cheapo from Home Depot that I've got all my bolts and stuff sorted into, and it is over full right now. But again, most of the stuff's on the wall, so when everything's on the wall, it's not that bad. I don't need to have full storage for everything when it's off the wall. It just needs to be enough for when everything's mostly set. Right off the bat, the couple things you're going to need. People, when they build their wall and they get their holds, they don't think about the tools they're going to have going into it. They may think like an Allen wrench is going to be enough to put their bolts on the wall. And yeah, that'll get you going. Gets tiring really quick, and by the time you've got carpal tunnel, it's too late. So we'll go ahead and cover the couple carpal tunnel options because it's good to have them initially. T-handles. Don't do Allen wrenches, just do T-handles. It's a lot easier to work with. I've got mine set up so I can hang on a harness or on a loop somewhere. This is good for new setters that are cross-threading with an impact. Just give them this by hand and you can kind of feel when it's binding up and kind of learn the basics of it. This is what I give new root setters to work with. This one particularly set up for Martini bolts. I've got one that's 5/16 set up for regular socket cap bolts. So always have a couple of Allen wrench T-handle setups. Pick those up early on. The other thing you're going to need is a pair of channel locks with vice grips to get on the other end of a bound up T-nut. You'll need someone on the other side of the wall, someone over here turning, and what happens is they get bound up and they've ruined thread inside of there. Someone has to clamp the other side so you can get the bolt out and reclaim that spot on the wall. You'll need these pretty quick, unfortunately. Those are the things that get you going. Okay, you won't be able to screw anything on. You won't be able to troubleshoot anything except for stuck T-nuts. So the next step, I think, if not, it's like the very next step. M12 Milwaukee impact. Any impact really, whatever brand you feel more comfortable with. I love Milwaukee. I've been using this one now for 4 years. I've used DeWalt, I've used Hitachi, I've used Makita. I love this Milwaukee. That M12 charges super quick. This is a pretty affordable system. Came with 2 batteries and a charger. This thing is amazing. There's a belt clip for when you're doing down here. If you're doing a wall up on a rope, I would probably tether it so you don't drop this thing on somebody. Which nobody should be below you anyways, but you still don't want to drop it that far. This one also has a quick disconnect, which is fantastic, right? It looks like works kind of like an air hose. Pop that collar up and you can drop whatever you need into right there. So first thing you'll get is a 3/8 inch driver adapter. Don't get smaller than that. Don't get larger than that. 3/8 is where it should be. 1/4 inch is too small. Half is way too big. So 3/8 inch adapter. And then you'll pick up a set for it. So I've got my 5/16 Allen for driving these in, and then I've got one somewhere for doing Martinis, a smaller size, but generally I just do those by hand because they like to strip out pretty easy. So I use these for the socket cap bolts, and then I've got a drill 7/16 drill bit for putting in new T-nuts. I've got 2 of these adapters to bits for Star and Phillips. Star is the way to go in my opinion. And then I've got this guy that attaches to my 3/8 driver, and this allows me to put a tap in this collar, lock it down, and I can rethread any stripped out T-nut, try and save it if it's still on the wall. The other thing, and one of the things I love the most about it, and probably the main reason to get a impact driver, is this drill bit right here with a countersink attachment right there. So this allows me to drill holes into my wood and countersink a screw head into it. You know, people use it for wood holds, all that kind of stuff without splitting it. Even better is converting holds to screw-ons. It'll countersink it enough that you can get a screw head in there just fine and work out real nicely. Looks nice and clean, just like that. All right. So if you don't have enough T-nuts in the wall, or you're really trying to fill it up and get that spray wall look to it, screw-ons are the way to go. And that attachment will convert almost anything to a screw-on. That's fantastic. You can't do that by hand. You almost can't do it with the drill press. This guy right here will do it all. So I would get this pretty quickly. I think that should be like one of your first investments if you didn't have it already. And you'll use it all over the place. You'll use it for building a wall. You'll use it for building inside the house. You'll be using it for maintenance work. This thing is one of the number one purchases. The other thing you can pick up that works with this M12 battery pack is a trim saw that you can use if you've really messed up and got a bolt locked up under a hold. You know, if the hold's on the wall and you cannot get it off, you can run this up underneath there and cut it off. Sometimes, if it's long enough. They do make a little bit more extended, but this might be your only option, or to go in the back and saw it off too. It's not a fun business. It's pretty messy. Last ditch resort. This is why I would consider this a tool you would get at the end, or maybe you can use it if you do some trim in the house. So that's that one. Okay, let's look at hardware. So I talked a little bit about Starbit for a second, and I said, you know, I really like that the most. Starbit can take a lot higher torque rating than a Phillips, and it slips out not at all. It just binds in there and goes. Whereas a Phillips will slip out. If it starts getting a lot of torque, you got to really put a lot of pressure on it to keep it from slipping out and spin all over the place, or a flathead that just like slides out. Torques don't do that. What they're called technically is Torx bits or star bits. It's a six pointed item that goes in there, and man, it's awesome. Pick yourself up some 2-inch deck screws. They're amazing. All right, so I would do 2-inch because you're going through 3/4 inches of plywood, and you're going through usually about 3/4 inches of material. So you want a little bit of room to breathe. 2 inches will get there. The only reason I would do shorter than that is like 1.5 inches for plywood volumes, but buy screws for your volumes. Not the install, the assembly of the volumes should be 1.5 inches. For actual install, 2 inches. For holds, for installing plywood, for installing volumes, for installing holds. 2 inches, hex bit. I like to keep the cover of the box I bought the screws in the bottom, so that when I run out, I know what I need to go get more of. And so they're always consistent. And a bit is usually in the box too. So if you're not sure what bit to get, there's one in the box. Good to go. Bunch of these. I get 200 of them right off the bat. You'll use them. You'll start converting stuff to screw-ons like I did here, and that's the way to go. I still like bolting on the majority of my holds, but when I'm trying to fill in gaps or get a specific movement, screw-ons, man, that's it. On that note, for screw-ons, before we run off too much farther, there's a thing called a Lone Star from escapeclimbing.com. That's essentially a bolt head with just like an 1/8 inch bolt below it. And by bolt, I just mean the stem, no threads or anything. It's got a hole down the middle of it where you can run a screw. What happens is you take that attachment, that adapter, and you drop it in a hold. Not that one. Just get the one that's been used here. Drop it in a hold. None of these gonna work. And it won't peek through the bottom, and you can run a screw through there, and maybe a screw for somewhere else, you know, just to double up on it. But that'll convert basically any shorter hold into a screw-on. I wouldn't do it for big holds like this, but for smaller holds where you're trying to fill space in, Lone Stars are a nice, clean way to do it without leaving that mono in the middle. Really like those. They're like, you pick up 10 or 20 of them. They're like less than $1 a piece, somewhere right there. Pick those up. Talked about screws. Talked about Lone Stars. I do keep some T-nuts in here spare to replace as they fall out. I would look at getting some escapes that you can screw in to replace the prongs with as they fail. A lot better T-nut. You can pick them up after you built the wall. They're kind of nice to have. Bolts. 2 inch and 2.5 inch is most of what you're going to use. 2 inch and 2.5 inch are these guys right here. And 2 inch doesn't have a shoulder. 2.5 inch has a small shoulder. And what happens is that small shoulder isn't long enough to come out the bottom of almost any hold. And so you can bolt anything on with these that are, as long as it's not too tall of a hold, like this guy, where it's just barely peeking through. If it's smaller than this, you can bolt it on. Even if it's a tiny little foot where you're worried about that shoulder coming through, probably not going to reach a T-nut. And if it does, it's not going to strip it out. So 2.5 inch are usable on almost everything shorter than that. All right. So I would pick up 50 of each size. Go from there. If you need more than that, if you know you're getting more holds than that, then go ahead and go 100 of each. But that's where I would start, is 50 of each size, 2 inch and 2.5 inch. If you're doing a bunch of feet that you know you have coming in, you can look at 1.5 inches for them, just so you're saving some money on bolts. You know, if you know everything you got coming in is teeny tiny little crimps, you don't have any big holes in, then sure, go for some shorter bolts. This is 1.5 inches. But that's depending on your hold selection. Most people are going to want a bunch of 2 inch, 2.5 inch. For the longer bolts especially, that's very hold dependent. Don't buy a bunch of longer bolts that you can't use on all your holds unless you know you have bigger holds coming in like this. And when they're this big, man, that's kind of a unique bolt compared to everything else. 99% of my holds can't use this bolt. So this bolt stays with that hold. That's the way it is. When I get these holds in like this, I buy a bolt for that hold. It doesn't go anywhere else. I don't even have to really sort it. It just stays with this hold on the wall or in the drawer, but the bolt's with it. You know, it's the same with like this one. Just these really long bolts is where I would keep those with the holds are for and buy them only for those holds. And one-offs like that you can pick up at Ace, Granger, Fastenal, you know. Whereas if you need 50 of one size, Ace isn't going to have that. Granger and Fastenal both may not have that. Granger and Fastenal usually have a larger selection because they're industrial suppliers, but they'll probably just order in a bigger bulk size like that. So it's nice to order those before you get your holds in if you didn't order holds with hardware. So 50 of each side, 50 of 2, 50 of 2.5 probably to start with. Go from there. Martinis. See, I've got some hex bolts just for my wood holds. Not a big deal. Kind of specialized. Martinis. I finally had to buy some holds that have Martinis in them. Martinis are nice because they can make a much shallower hold without cutting down on the material you use behind there. If you want to keep a socket cap below the surface, you cut down how much material is behind it. You'll get down to like less than a 1/2 inch, and that's kind of stretching it. That's getting close. You'll crack holds that way. I've learned from experience. Martinis will let you get a little bit closer to that, and they'll distribute that pressure, and it just won't crack holds as much. And that's what you would do if you want to continue using bolt-ons instead of converting to screw-ons or buying screw-ons. So Martinis you can buy if you know you're getting Martini holds. If you're not getting any Martini holds, don't buy any Martini bolts. Pretty simple. If you do need to buy Martini bolts, you shouldn't need to get bigger than 1.5 inches, and 1.5 inches is really as small as you need to go too. 1.5 inches will work on everything below that because there is no shoulder. Whereas if you're getting like longer than 1.5 inches, you're getting like 2 inch. There shouldn't be 2 inch holds or 3 inch holds out there using Martini bolts. They should just use socket caps or be screw-ons or something, but not Martinis. Martinis are for short, shallow holds. 1.5 inches should cover all your bases if you know you need them. That's kind of it. We talked about storage. We talked about the impact. We talked about the screws. Kind of the whole shebang. I said people build these walls and they don't know what's going. They don't know what they're going to need to troubleshoot. They get their first spinner and they don't have vice grips handy or channel locks handy. I just kind of want to shortcut that for you and just let you know what I have on hand to correct a problem, or if I want to add a new T-nut in for a new hold somewhere, or if I want to convert a hold to a screw-on. This is the stuff I have, and it's very rare I have to step outside of this selection to make something work. If you got any questions or comments, feel free to tag in on this video on YouTube or catch me on Instagram at Aux'Arc Climbing, AUXARC Climbing. You can also find me as a co-admin on DIY Climbing Holds Facebook group. And then I'm also usually on Home Climbing Wall Facebook group, just hanging out. And then Homewaller.com is kind of a new resource that's really nice. It's an offshoot of Climbing Business Journal, and they just focus on the home wall side of things. And they got a bunch of good articles and information there where you can find videos like this and whatever you want, really. And they're growing and expanding all the time. So check them out. That's a great place to follow on Instagram as well. So yeah, tag in. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys learned something from this, and hope this kind of prepared you for what you're going to need, or if you already have a wall and you don't have this equipment, you'd be like, man, that's what I need to pick up. So thanks again for watching. I appreciate it.